Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Welcome to the last session today in this room. I'm really excited about my two panelists who have two amazing projects in the voting and democracy space. We'll just start by quick introductions, and then we'll get right to it. So I'll leave Nithin and Nimit to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for the invite. So my name is Nithin Eapen. I'm one of the co-founders of Electis. Electis is a open source voting protocol. And it's more of an academic project. We're trying to do a true decentralized voting if possible. Now, my background, I've been a tech guy, and then I was a Wall Street trader. I started my own company, bootstrapped it, and then I found Bitcoin. I just loved the decentralized space, and I happened to be very early in the space, and I was investing in all these coins, whatever you call shit coins or whatever, even though it looks bad right now. That's where we made our money from. So I just love the space. Fundamentally, the idea, the philosophy, I'm an uber libertarian. That's how I got into the space, because most of my friends were in it. Initially, I thought all my friends were potheads. But then I figured out that I was really late. Still, it was very early, and just fell in love with it. Right now, I speak at conferences. I teach people how to get on the space, whether it's trading, investing, or just understanding the technology. I do weird kind of events. I've spoken about faith and morality of Bitcoin at a Catholic convention. I've spoken about putting gods on the blockchain at a TEDx conference, and next week I'm doing with one of the largest influencers in India. I'm doing an evening on crypto and compassion to raise money for disabled children. Just both of us together. So I do all kinds of stuff over here.
Including voting.
Including voting.
Okay.
Thank you, Vanessa, for having us here. Hi, my name is Nimit. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Voatz. Voatz is a new elections platform. We've been around for about a little less than 4 years, based in Boston. Our focus has been on mobile voting, with the help of biometrics, and then using the blockchain in a somewhat unconventional and unique way to secure the process and the ballots. We recently finished our 39th election, was with the city and county of Denver in Colorado. And as our first sort of go-to-market strategy in the US, we've been focusing on the military voters, their families, and US citizens deployed overseas. Excited to be here. My personal background is in cybersecurity, so we think ourselves as more of a cyber company, less of an elections company, because as you can imagine, we are the target of a lot of attacks on a daily basis. So it's been really interesting to see how the blockchain infrastructure we launched 4 years ago has stood the test of time. So excited to be here and love to talk more about it. Thank you.
So there's a lot of debate and discussions about how blockchain can help the voting space, but what problem are you actually trying to address? Before we get into how you address it, like what are the issues that you are tackling with this technology, and why is this technology ideal to tackle them?
Yeah, I can go first. So in our case, we have a few different focus areas. One is obviously security of the remote voting process. Second is accessibility. That's why the mobile piece is very critical for us. The third aspect is auditability and transparency. So if you vote the traditional way, which is using paper ballots in person, the way the process has been designed, once you submit your paper ballot into the scanner of the box, from that point onwards, you have no way of knowing whether it was actually counted, whether somebody actually pulled it out, whether it actually mattered. Similarly, if you are a remote voter and you're doing absentee mail-in ballots, it's the same process. Firstly, half of the ballots don't reach on time. If they did, there's no way for you to know that it was actually counted as you intended or as you cast. So those are the problems, core problems we are looking to solve with with the platform we built.
So with Electis, which is a little different from Voatz, is they are really live, okay? They are doing it. For us, the security, all those things are bringing more people to vote because now you can do it remote. Besides that, one of the key things, why we want to do it as an open source, decentralized voting protocol is, right now, any election in any country is run by the government who's in power. So we're trusting the fact that they will do it fair and square. Many places in the world, once the elections are done, you always hear the opposition saying that those guys tampered with the voting machine, so there's a conflict of interest. You can say that it's a separate election commission who's doing it. Like India, it's the largest democracy, went to vote recently. So you have the losers always say the other guys tampered with the machine. So we are in US, we have the same problem. Let's take the 2000 elections. Same issues are here. So we want it to be where it's like Bitcoin. Anybody can join, anybody can check if it's possible. That is our goal. Is it possible to get there? I don't know, maybe not today.
So in terms of security, how is the blockchain more secure than the existing system or any other electronic system that would be deployed?
So in our case, we are using the blockchain to secure the aggregate vote. By that, what I mean is because we're doing absentee voting begins typically in our case 45 days prior to the actual election day. So an eligible voter can vote starting then up until 7 or 8 p.m. on election day. Now, once they've submitted a ballot on their mobile device, it is staying in it's distributed across a whole bunch of servers, but from a layman's perspective, it's in a digital lockbox, which means there is a theoretical possibility that it can be tampered with in a traditional voting system. So in a traditional electronic voting system, that was one of the big challenges. So by kind of decentralizing that piece of the infrastructure amongst ever-growing list of nodes, we have solved that piece of the problem. The other aspect from a security perspective is giving citizens the ability to audit their individual vote, which we feel is very powerful and kind of, Nithin just mentioned, if every citizen out there were able to take their phone, get on the blockchain, say, okay, that's my vote, it was cast as I intended and counted as cast, without revealing identity, without being subject to coercion, that we feel is a huge, huge win and improvement over the current process. So those are kind of the twin goals. And then at a larger level, cybersecurity. So traditional database systems which are storing voter data, ballot chain of custody, are open to tampering, even from insider attacks or obviously from outside. In our case, we have basically removed the possibility that us, the government, a third-party auditor, can tamper with any data once it's written. So those are kind of the three security areas where we feel a blockchain-based infrastructure is better than what exists right now.
Yeah, there's nothing more to add on that one. He's covered it all.
So in the governments you've been working with or the communities you've been working with, has there been any resistance in driving adoption for blockchain and voting?
See, everybody wants this. Everybody's now, especially right now, the word blockchain is a fad too. You see, everybody wants to be on the blockchain, even if it's meant for them or not. So right now, like Estonia is the one that's done the voting stack or the political stack on pretty much the blockchain, but it's a centralized stack over there. So there again, there's that issue that they are still controlling those servers. It can still be tampered with. The only thing is maybe you can put a hash out and you made a vote. I guess you can see your hash. If they've changed that, you can see that your hash has changed and you can make a formal complaint against that at that point. Something like that. But it's a step ahead. Yeah, I would say that is the key.
So In our case, because we've been focused on the US election market, where, as you may know, the federal government doesn't run elections here, it's the states. So it's every state, usually the Secretary of State's office, in some states the Lieutenant Governor, and some states there's a Board of Elections which runs the elections. And there's also a tremendous amount of regulatory hurdles out there. Out of the 50 states, 45 states actually have laws which basically prevent us from doing an end-to-end verifiable mobile internet-based election system. So we focus on the 5 states which have friendlier laws for us, and that's where we've had a lot of success. And now we see the tide changing. 18 states this year, based on the feedback and the success we had with the West Virginia elections last year, have put out legislation which would at least open the door for a similar project in their states, initially focused on the military, their families, any US citizen living overseas, and in some states also the disability community. So at least the door is opening, but still beyond those early adopter states, there's still a lot of hurdle. There are a lot of people who are vehemently opposed to any technology in elections. So there's still, I would say, still a long way to go.
And so one question, is the experience of the voter different using the blockchain? Are there more features, more opportunities to voice your opinion in a voting mechanism? I remember that Democracy Earth did some very granular voting mechanism for the peace process. And so is that something you've experienced also? Or is it just I vote yes or no, and basically that doesn't change anything with the blockchain? Are we looking at liquid democracy, something that's where the citizen is more engaged?
It's got a light there.
In the US, the concept of liquid democracy is still very nascent, and there is, to an extent, a fair amount of opposition from even local legislators to do it. That being said, there have been some very successful initiatives. One good example is the city of Seattle. They actually have what you could refer to as a democracy coin. It's not currently on the blockchain, but could easily translate there. Similarly, Oakland, Cambridge in Massachusetts, Minneapolis. So there's some early movement there, but they are not really utilizing the liquid democracy potential of the blockchain. I think the furthest we've seen right now is giving citizens the ability to do an audit. So if you look at the Denver election we did 2 back-to-back elections, the main municipal and then the runoff, which just finished last week. And for the first time, voters are able to do what's called as a citizens audit. So it's actually still open, and I would encourage you, if you are interested in following that process, to go online, sign up to be a citizen auditor, and basically audit the entire Denver election from your home. And I think that's kind of the first baby step. The second one will be you as an individual voter. If you voted on your iPhone or a compatible Android device, you'd be able to audit your individual vote. And I think the third or possibly the fourth step would be taking it more at the level of liquid democracy stature, what South America is doing with Democracy Earth and what Horizon State is trying to do in Australia. But I think in the US, we are a little away from that.
I think it's easier once it's an app. You can add processing on top of it. Like it's very hard to do something on a paper ballot. There's not so many options. You'll have to create it, and then they have to go to a printing press, and all those kind of physical limitations are stopped, and it's scalable. Once you have, okay, this is what we approve, this is what the people want, you update it, everybody has it. It's much easier. I think they'll make it much easier. So many more options can be added at that point.
So let's say fast forward in 5 years, a lot of more states have adopted blockchain technology. How do you think that will impact our democracy in the US or elsewhere? And how does that change the relationship between the citizens and their governments? Or does it not change anything?
The audit part, you see, once like you were saying earlier, now we can see that, okay, I voted. I don't have to make sure that the ballot has reached there by mail or not. Did it reach on time? Those kind of things you can check, and as a citizen you can complain. Or now at this point, I don't know. I sent it by mail. Maybe it reached there. Maybe it not. I have no clue. Where is my audit over there? The citizens can be more proactive at that time, and they can respond.
I think 5 years is a long time. It's really hard to predict. Hopefully, the mobile phone or the smartphone will survive till then, or we may have a new gadget like a chip here, which does everything with the phone does. But going with that assumption, I think a couple of different possibilities are definitely possible. One is greater citizen engagement, not because of the phone, just being on the phone, but just because that's how we live. That's how society has evolved in the last decade or so. And people want to vote the way they live their lives. And so we really hope that the citizen engagement aspect will increase tremendously, not just for voting 2 times in a year or 4 times in a year, but throughout the year, like engaging with your local government, engaging with your local elected representatives, kind of having a say in the day-to-day, budgeting decisions at the local level, which to an extent impact you more than the national or the federal election. So we feel at least that there is a huge potential to change. The other aspect of, there's tremendous risks as well. One of the risks we are constantly looking at is if a large number of people start to vote remotely, what happens to coercion? Because that's a real threat. Maybe not as much in the US right now, but there are certainly parts of the world where that would be a real threat. And so how will the whole process, how will society, how will governments react to that? So there's definitely a lot of benefits, but a fair amount of risks as well.
But that wouldn't change the way who's allowed to vote, right? If you're a citizen of a state, you'll still be entitled to vote, whether it's remotely or not.
Absolutely. I think you'll always have a choice. And it would be unfair to say everybody has to vote on the phone, just like we feel it's unfair to say everybody has to vote using paper. I think every citizen should be given the choice, whatever they're comfortable with, as long as it's past the basic security parameters and it has been thoroughly vetted. I think people will always have that choice for the foreseeable future. Eventually, maybe better things will come out of it, but right now, at least for the foreseeable future, yeah.
See, if something like this comes up, I think the biggest change will be in who will be the candidates in an election. Those kind of things can also change. It's just not about voting at that point. And the other piece is, for all these things to work, there's this digital identity. How do you make one digital identity that can be used everywhere for elections? Is it going to be controlled by the state, or things like that also come into play? So all these things are evolving, and it's 5 years, as you said, is too long a time, at this moment. I don't even know if the blockchain is going to be here at that time.
I have other questions, but I want to open it up to the audience, if you had any specific questions.
Yeah, regarding the identity, you were talking about, one of the most important parts of democracy and voting is the fact that my vote is secret, then nobody has to know it. So whenever it's on the blockchain, there's going to be some documentation that I voted for someone, and it's going to stay there actually. So what are ways that you guys are fixing that problem?
That's a very important question. So there are multiple, so I won't get into deep-rooted implementation, but there are ways to do it so the identity of the voter is never recorded there. So let's say in the future, 10 years from now, assuming things remain static, encryption algorithms get broken, just as an example, and you are able to reverse engineer any encoded or encrypted data on the blockchain. All you would be able to see is what's already open once the election is closed, when keys are released by the jurisdiction, is who got the votes, and you'd be able to do your aggregate total. There will be no way for you to track back the identity of the voter because all other data is masked. The only exception would be if the voter himself or herself releases his or her anonymous ID in a public domain and says, okay, Twitter, Facebook, here's my anonymous ID for the XYZ election. And then if the counter thing happens, then yes, you can correlate. Similarly, you would be able to correlate if, let's say, in a precinct, there were only 2 voters for some reason, and obviously you have 2 votes on the blockchain for that precinct, and you know who those 2 people are because 3 months after the election, the voter files become public, so you know those 2 people voted in the precinct, so one of those 2, basically, your identity has then been revealed. So outside of those extreme cases, you can pretty much mask the voter's identity for good unless the voter reveals it himself or herself. The trick is to do it in a way so you are allowing them to still do an audit, because that's been traditionally the hardest thing to do, where you cannot audit if there's nothing about your identity over there. And that's the piece we're actively trying to solve using a mobile device and the corresponding architecture.
It's just think about it as if you're looking at from Bitcoin, you don't know your private key. You can see the public key. Everybody can see the public key. It's very similar. Let's put it that way.
2 other questions?
Do you think we'll see the emergence of in the next 10 years of transnational voting and voting for new systems beyond the nation-state systems?
It's very possible. It's very, very possible because I guess it'll come to, some ID system over there can be, if they're so prevalent, like let's say Facebook comes up with, instead of the global coin, they come up with a Facebook ID. You've got already, 2.3 or 3 billion people on Facebook, some huge number. Well, you can use that as a vote, right? If they are saying, okay, this guy is verified and all they can put conditions that all people with so-and-so criteria can vote, and it doesn't matter where the territory is. You can start doing things like that. It depends on the network effect at that point. How many people do you have on that system?
Yes.
Hi, I was wondering if there are any applications of your technology to the census. The census is coming up in 2020 as well. It could have massive implications for the political system here in the US. So are you applying any of that, or do you see applications?
Yes, there are huge applications. Unfortunately for us, we've been so buried in the election process, being a small company. So we have had to pass on that opportunity for now. But definitely that's one which, in the years to come, has huge potential. Yeah.
Certainly by the next census, because the problem with any of these kind of, whether it's like, think of their struggle to just get into these states with the regulation. Now try for census, how do you do it? Who do you approach? Imagine moving one of those papers from any government office to say that, okay, let's approve this company to do census for us. There'll be a huge furor over that. There'll be the Senate or the House. All these guys have to approve bills or something for that. It's not going to be easy. For us, that's why we are looking at these things are being applied at a university level first from a voting perspective, because then we don't have to get so much approvals out there. We're trying this out as an experiment over there, as nothing's going to happen if it goes wrong also. Nobody's going to create a big problem. And then we're trying bottoms up, that kind of an approach.
Another question in the back? Yeah.
So in the past 10 years, really since we got past the problems in Florida, most of the fights over elections has been around accessibility and identity and connecting the two, because political parties have figured out one great way to win is just decide who can participate in the election beyond what the actual election account is. Kind of, how do you see the kind of extra national or extra government identity potential of blockchain to change that accessibility equation, and kind of what are the near-term plans to kind of use identity on the blockchain to get beyond these ID laws that end up kind of hurting minority participation predominantly.
So let me put an example for this. I'll take the Indian elections as an example. Okay, it's a huge exercise. It happens in more than almost 2 months. You got close to 1 billion people going to vote. And most areas are volatile because there are people who are capturing booths. So let's assume that only 50% went there to vote. After some time, the guys who are stronger, either with some kind of power, they'll just start stamping on, they'll just take papers and start stamping it. That's how it's done in majority of the countries. And do not think that does not happen in US. I've sat in booths over here. I've sat in booths where people said, this is not the person. It doesn't matter if the presiding officer over there says, no, this is the person. That's it. They can vote. As simple as that. So these kind of things. So at that point, let's say you need some kind of private key to make that vote, whether it's a fingerprint or some mathematical key which only the person has, or maybe they can't just keep doing those kind of fraudulent votes, hopefully. See?
So I can give you a more US-based perspective on that. The best way to solve that problem you highlighted is to secure our voter registration systems with the help of a blockchain-like infrastructure. I use the term blockchain-like because you can do it in different ways. You don't have to use the blockchain, but the blockchain actually makes it easier to do it. And the advantage of that would be, so one of the big concerns is, like you pointed out, people get removed from voter registration systems arbitrarily in some places in the country, right? And you have no recourse. And by the time you figure out a recourse, the election's over. You've lost your ability to vote. And so imagine a system where somebody tried, firstly, automatic voter registration. The moment you turn 16, you provisionally registered. 18, automatically registered, fully eligible to vote as long as you're a citizen. The next thing is putting that data, at least the underlying security of it, on a blockchain-based infrastructure. Imagine if a malicious clerk tries to remove your data. What will happen? It'll become publicly visible. Person will get shamed, he'll lose his or her job. So the incentive to do any kind of fraud is removed. What about the voter? The voter can still commit fraud by registering in 2 states and trying to vote in multiple places. So there has been huge progress on that front. You can Google a system called ERIC, E-R-I-C. More than half the states in the US have started collaborating to basically weed out a very small number of people who try and vote in multiple jurisdictions. And so combine that with this VRS improvement, and you will reduce any form of fraud, any form of misuse. At the same time, give citizens the confidence that if some city clerk or county clerk is trying to change my voter registration data, I get an alert on my phone. I have 30 days to respond and say, okay, this is not right. I am an eligible voter. You can't just remove me without no reason. Or I change my address, but I'm still in the same precinct. You just can't pull me out of the system for no reason. That would be huge. That would transform the whole process. So just beyond voting, if we can do that, those 2 simple steps, automatic voter registration and secure the underlying database of the voter registration systems, we will solve that problem.
So we see how complex the problems that you're trying to solve are. Thank you so much for what you do. I have a last question for you. It's not a trick question, because since 5 years is too long, where do you think either your individual projects or other projects will be in 3 years? And what will we have been able to achieve? What is your vision for the next 3 years?
For all the projects that we've invested, I'm primarily an investor, so I invest. I would say 95% would fail, 95 to 99% would fail. That's kind of my thesis. I'm only hoping, I just hope that one will succeed and that will make 1000x. Projects like this, Electis and all, is more very nonprofit. We're not taking money. We're not raising money. It's purely donation, pro bono kind of work, because we want it to be like we don't want to be influenced. And this is more of giving back, or the impact kind of projects. And impact kind of projects are very hard. 5 years from now, I hope maybe will it be successful? I don't know if it'll go live. But even if it doesn't go live, the work that we do from a research papers and stuff like that, so that somebody else can use it. And that's what failures bring about. It's okay to fail. But in that, there are so many learnings that you get, and that can be used. And I don't know what that is going to be, even in 3 years.
Nimit?
So our goal for the next, I would say next 2 years, or even shorter, is specific. We think we can get to those 5 friendly states. So we have a shot coming at state number 3 pretty soon. So in the US, at least 5 states, maybe more if some miraculous legislation passes. And a couple of international jurisdictions and these are relatively smaller countries, but still significant. So we feel like that would be a big win for us to have 5 US states and a couple of smaller international jurisdictions adopting a mobile-focused system which uses a blockchain, uses biometrics, and enhances the accessibility and security of the voting process.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our speakers today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So this is the end of the conference, but it's not the end of the day. We have drinks that are sponsored by Accenture from 5 to 7. So please take the time to connect. And if you guys are coming tomorrow, there are 4 working groups. Please register yourself with my colleagues in the front. There's 1 working group on climate, 1 working group on decentralized finance, 1 working group on land rights and refugees, and 1 working group on universal basic income. The purpose of tomorrow's session, it's only in the morning. It's really, look, if you're passionate about one of these topics and you want to participate and you want to, move things forward, because that's the only way we're going to get there, is by all working together. Please, be involved. If you can't make it tomorrow, please sign up, and as the follow-up of the conference, we'll give you more information about the work that we'll be doing all year. So thank you.